I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey, AfterBuzzers, thank you for joining us. This is Amazon's The Hunters, Season 1. We're talking Episode 6, Ruth 116. Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Nate Miller. I'm joined with my lovely co-host, Keven Allen.
Thank you, Nate.
How you doing today, bud?
It's been a nice day. Yeah, it's been a real nice day.
Since the last few hours.
I know.
Chatted.
I had pizza and watched some TV.
Nice.
It was a way to do a Friday night.
Yeah, I got to eat too. It was very necessary. So real quick before we break all the ins and outs of this episode down, let's give some overall thoughts. What was your kind of first impression of the episode?
This was a nice one. Being framed by the wedding ceremony. After the way the last couple of episodes have been, it was cool to have something kind of coalesce into, I'll say, a quieter moment. Obviously, there's a lot still happening with the show. We're following other plot lines, but there was something about the wedding ceremony and bringing Ruth back, so to speak. It just made me feel more at ease, which is tricky for the show to do.
I agree. Yeah, last time we talked a lot about how, in that midway point of the season, they had kind of, now that they developed everyone, they've kind of broken everything apart. And this was starting to glue some of the pieces back together. So seeing the wedding and stuff was good. And seeing, each of the characters kind of come to their own conclusions was good. But let's kind of
we got some resolution finally and some stuff.
Right. So like you mentioned, we got to see this wedding. So they pick up right after the explosion and everything that happens last episode. We find out that Roxy has quit. She kind of left and said, "I'm out," pretty shaken from the explosion. And Murray and his wife, they had talked about the wedding that was going to be happening last episode. And so we get to see that wedding play out, and we find out that Jonah is going to be a party to it and get to be involved. And it's really interesting because, we're seeing both sides. We're seeing this cultural celebration and expression of love and family and stuff. And at the same time, it seems like Murray is having flashbacks of his personal camp experience all the way back to when they were taken and his son was killed.
Honestly, that broke me.
Yeah.
Like, as heavy and sometimes hard to watch as this show is, I broke. And I was just sobbing on my couch during that whole sequence. That was rough.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, it's that kind of thing where you knew what was going to happen, and you couldn't not, you can't look away. It was a really touching moment for the characters, and especially for him to be having that moment during the wedding and
Saul Rubenek's performance, I think, is what tipped me over the edge. Like the actors who I wish I knew their names, playing young Murray in the flashback, like he did an amazing job. But then cutting away from all of that tension and strife and heartache to the quiet heartache that present day Murray was feeling at the wedding, and just the juxtaposition, his daughter being like, "Dad, it's okay to let go," like all of that. It was too much in the best way. But
yeah, too much is definitely the word I would use.
Yeah.
So Jonah ends up giving his speech after he kind of butchers the prayer he's supposed to read. He reads a prayer that his grandmother, his Softer Ruth, read to him, and he gets a nice little moment where Ghost Ruth comes back.
Yeah.
Also very touching.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, but then Jonah afterwards, he mentions that he finally feels like he's part of the tribe, which is a big moment for him, obviously, and also for Murray and everyone else involved. But the other thing that happens is he talks to Meyer about his, I forget what it's called, but the necklace that all the males are wearing. And earlier we saw that he found one in Ruth's room. So he comes to the conclusion that, Murray is his grandfather, but he never gets to kind of confront him about this. What do you think? Do you think Murray is his grandfather?
There's a lot of coincidence here that his grandfather was absent. Also, Meyer was absent. The Meyers, I'll never remember the name of this. as you know, I'm terrible with pronouns. The necklace is missing conveniently from Meyers' possession, but Ruth happens to have one that she doesn't really need to have. It just, if it's not the case, it's a lot of coincidence. And we know that Meyer and Ruth have had a relationship and of some sort. And I believe she mentioned that she fell in love with him back during the wartime.
Yeah.
So, like, how could you not come to that conclusion? How could it at least not be addressed?
I mean, I agree with you. The only reason why I think he might not be is because it does seem so like so
Convenient.
yeah, it seems so convenient that I could see it being something a little bit more nuanced. But also at this point, like it would make sense. I just find it strange that Meyer wouldn't like say that. I mean, I understand he's a strange guy, but I still feel like he could have been like, by the way, I'm your long lost grandfather or something, especially when, he has no other family. He's thinking in the last one he had died.
Mm.
I don't know. It's an interesting kind of I didn't like, I had kind of thought maybe that was a thing being implied in the past, but now with them addressing it so directly, it's clearly like a major plot point.
It does seem a little bit like television to have this be the secret revelation.
Right.
What I'll say is that I don't think it's out of character for Meyer to keep it a secret, but for the same reason that I don't think it's out of character to not ever address it if it is brought up. Like he would just be like, "Yeah, I have no comment on this. Why would I?"
Right.
Like whatever the situation actually is, he would be like, "Yeah, why would I talk about it?"
Yeah.
So
it would take
I
a
don't
lot
think we'll ever find out.
to get him to actually open up.
Yeah, he's not that kind of guy.
So the other members of the team kind of go on their own independent investigations. Lonnie tries to get some information on that red book that he found, and talks to what seems like a translator or a book expert or something, who tells him it's called Vril, the Manual for the Coming Race. And apparently, this is a real book. It's a real
Oh God,
1800s
really?
sci-fi book. Yes. That was used for German propaganda, but this is like a rewritten version of the book that includes some like almost hidden messages to their current plans. So I thought this was really interesting. I'm glad that they're keeping a lot of the detective-y kind of spy code stuff plot involved in each episode, even if there's more like emotional things going on, like the wedding. And it was also interesting to see Lonnie somewhat be useful. Like, I mean, he just asked him to basically tell him the answer, but that's something, I guess.
Yeah, but he did the legwork and got to the end of this clue. Like, so yeah, he's contributing, absolutely.
Yeah, this whole thing sounds terrifying, but at least it seems like the team is going to have a better understanding of what the Nazis' plans are.
Honestly, that manual title reminded me of the Twilight Zone, To Serve Man. Like, it's
That's
secretly a cookbook. Like, it's to me, it's that level of terrifying.
Yikes. That's a good reference. I didn't even think about that.
I don't know why my brain went there, but then in fact, it's a manual of like, here's how to destroy everyone.
Right. So Joe, on his little investigation, goes to visit his buddy Eric, who he knew in basic training camp. Obviously, Eric was hurt in some way in the war. He also implies that there was some weird experiments going on at this place called Edgewood, and the lead scientist there is also this ghost person. So he gets a name from him, Tim Randall, and brings that back to the team. I mean, I'm assuming this just means that we're going to see Tim Randall, if not next episode, very soon, as he seems to be kind of a higher up figure in what's going on in this conspiracy.
I think we might see him a little later. I feel like it'll be 9 or 10 because it sounds to me like the ghost is the guy. Like if the colonel is the big bad, that if they take down the colonel, it's all done. But the ghost is like the personal villain for Meyer and thus Meyer and Company. And he was long thought dead and they're having trouble fighting down and his name is the ghost. Like I feel he's going to be enough of a challenge on its own that it's not going to be like a one and done episode. I feel like he's the season conclusion and then as the show continues they'll get closer to the colonel. But yeah, that's not that this show follows a lot of television structure to begin with. Like,
so then also we get to see Harriet on. Turns out she did not double cross the hunters. She was triple crossing the Nazis by pretending to be a planted agent, investigating this guy in her car. And we also get this very interesting flashback of her, which at first I thought was trying to make us think that she was like a child German planted double agent thing.
yeah,
But no, it turns out that she had Jewish parents who shipped her to a UK nunnery where they hide the girls by having them change their names.
yeah. I mean, it was. I think it was the show did a great job of kind of teetering back and forth on like what side is she on, even with the entire backstory. And it's a great backstory to do that with, because if the way her parents hid her and her Jewish ancestry is by having her assimilate into the most Christian of cultures, it's, I mean, objectively, that's a really good way to keep people from realizing that someone is Jewish.
Yeah, and
And
I really liked how they showed the head nurse like expressing to them how important it was, not because they want them to like not be themselves or forget where they came from, but because it's for their own safety, and that like their parents sent them here because they knew it was like the only chance that they had. I thought
you
that
got to
was really
commit.
interesting because that's tough. It's really tough to have those kids, and like you want to care for them and be nice to them and stuff, but in this case you have to be stern because they don't understand the weight of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. One slip up is probably all it takes, and that's this great spy training. I mean, from a very early age.
Yeah.
So I kind of
So
get Sister Harriet. It's like whole package
right,
now.
it's a somewhat short backstory that still explains so like a lot about her like in a very short time. So her real name I guess is Rebecca, although I doubt we'll see her be called that much more often.
I mean, she joined MI6. Like you leave your civilian life behind. She's not that person anymore.
All right. Yeah, so she's in this car ride. She's trying to ask this guy questions. It turns out that it doesn't seem like he knows too much of the grander scheme that we're kind of learning about. But he does have a very important role, as we find out when she delivers her or delivers him to Murray. And it turns out to be the guy who killed Murray's son. He, of course, is not super happy to see him. I don't expect it to be a happy reunion.
I mean,
Um,
of all days.
but it makes a lot of sense when we raise these questions about her ears perking up at hearing the name. And obviously, she and Murray have had conversations about what has happened and his son dying and stuff. I mean, it seemed like Meyer knew as well. So I guess they've all heard the story that he shared with them.
Yeah, I mean that has to be the case, and it's understandable why it would have been shared. Early on when everyone's kind of throwing their hat into the ring and their cause, what brought them there. It's kind of I don't want to say strange, but it's surprising that Harriet would hold that name in her back pocket and be that ready to act on hearing like Kenny Swiggins or whatever it was. Uh, so it's like, I have to retract everything I said in our last episode. Like, clearly she is committed to this group, not just what the hunters do or what they stand for, but each individual person.
Yeah.
That was Murray and Mindy's cause, and she took it upon herself.
Yeah. I mean, there must be a serious camaraderie with them, and I would imagine a short personal list of people that are especially wanted for their involvement in these acts
Hmm.
and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I was definitely not expecting that to happen after Harriet taking off and stuff. So it was a nice surprise for me. But when it all came together, it really made sense, and it was nice to
Yeah.
essentially have all the team kind of back together. With the exception of Roxy, who's still recovering. But in the meantime, Millie, recovering from her bathroom attack, still goes to meet shoot, what's his name? Danny.
Danny.
Yeah. And gets information on his contact and meets this guy who shows her this file that he has and tells her confirmation of this project called Operation Paperclip. Again, like we discovered last episode, thousands of Nazis brought into the country by the government for various different things. And when she brings this to her boss, I mean, he says that he believes her and that it's about like she's in danger, so he's gonna send it up and handle it personally. Do you think that he was telling the truth? Do you think that he actually believes her, or do you think he's like in on it and just wants to bury it? Or
I actually believed him. I don't know why. Like usually my TV audience instincts say like, oh, don't ever trust anybody who's not right there with you. But he raises. I think he's accurate with his point in that if this is true, then this is huge. This is like fundamental, and it could anybody could be in on this. So I believe him when he says it's above both their pay grades. I believe when he says that neither one of them can handle this, that it's that in depth and like that deeply rooted a thing. So yeah, it seemed genuine to me that he had those reservations, I guess I'll call them, but still didn't want to snuff out the thing completely. And clearly, like I think he was totally right in saying like you can't handle this as it is. Like look at you. I mean, doing this all on her own, and she almost died. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely initially believed him, but for some reason, when he was wrapping up, I just got some vibe that like he is in on it already in some way, and that he's just trying to again like derail her from what's going on. I don't know.
I worry that it'll get derailed because he's too scared of it. If anything, that he won't have the same conviction that Millie has in this quest of hers, and that in his hands it won't continue moving up the ladder.
Yeah, so she decides that because she's already been targeted and she doesn't feel safe, that her loved ones are also not safe. So she goes home and breaks up with her girlfriend in a really heart wrenching scene.
Mm.
Which usually this never ends well in TV shows
No,
when you do the breakup to save your significant other. But hey, hopefully it does this time.
there's no going back. It's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, so finally, our last little bit of plot, we get to see Biff give his speech to the president because the secretary didn't actually carry out the information that he wanted, and ends up making an enemy of the secretary whose name is Juanita Crex, which is quite the name. And they kind of have like a confrontation in the lobby where she is like, look, I know you're full of shit and I don't trust you. And he basically kind of drops the facade of Buff Simpson and gets real, almost revealing his true colors,
Oh yeah.
all up to the point of saying like, hey, I'm a Nazi, and threatens her and says, don't get in my way, yada yada yada. And she is terrified. Now, I do have to say, while the speech performance was impeccable, that guy's definitely a great bullshitter. I think that he may bite himself in the ass with what he did with Juanita. I think she may have some power to still retaliate against him. She figure out kind of what the plot was. What did you think of that whole thing?
Well, despite him showing his fangs and venom, even she's not the kind of person who's just gonna like run with her tail between her legs. She's not powerless, and she's still very much a present part of democracy, just as much as he is. So yeah, she's not going to go away. I don't think she's really going to do it like kicking and screaming. Like as much as she's not like terrified of him, she kind of should be. But he didn't make the full impression that he is capable of to her. So yeah, she's just gonna keep. She's smart enough to realize that he's a charlatan, but I don't think she's quite figured out how dangerous he is. So she's going to keep opposing him just as if he was any other senator. And
Yeah.
that's probably not going to end well for her. It's clearly going to be a thorn in his side, but I think in the long run, she's not going to come out of it well.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with you if it wasn't for knowing that he has kind of pissed off his Nazi support team. It doesn't seem like not that they will leave him out completely, but it doesn't seem like they really have his back right now. I mean, we'll see, but um, that's my only hang up. And I kind of want to root for Juanita.
Oh, I'm definitely rooting for her. I want her to succeed, but I think that Senator Simpson is such a important cog in the Nazis' plan that they can't really afford to get rid of him. They won't go to him for any more than they absolutely have to, but he's gonna be there, and he does a great job. Like I, as a viewer, I'm like, he's so full of crap, Jimmy Carter. How could you not see this? But he clearly makes an impression on the president, and that whole peanut farmer speech, like he's not going away anytime soon for anybody. He's a pain in everyone's ass except for the president, and that's where he gets his power from.
So the rest of the Nazis are having a meeting,
Mhm.
and it turns out Travis made it look like the hunters killed the henchman, of course, because he's not going to take the rap for it.
Yeah.
He ends up getting the go-ahead from the colonel, where he definitely makes sure to antagonize Tobias for not getting it done the right time. It's an interesting
It's
scene. They
just
go,
poking the bear.
yeah, they go to stake out the wedding, but there's too many Jewish mafia guys there for them to attack. So they sneak into uh, Meyers' house somehow, get
Yeah.
into the ark, past the secret door and everything, and they find out this. They find this treasure trove of information on the Nazis' plans and stuff, and they decide to burn it down because it'd be too risky to start a gunfight in the house and everything. Why not just destroy their source of information? So this is a pretty huge blow to the hunters. Not only just in terms of having actionable information and intel and stuff, but also just having your home space, your home base like violated.
Mm.
It's not good for morale, it's not good for actual safety. It was pretty, I mean, once they got in there I had a feeling that that's what they were going to do, because Nazis like to break things and burn shit.
Yeah.
uh
Yes,
but
they do.
seeing it happen, and especially like Myers' face, like you could definitely tell that it was years and years of work, him and Ruth did just to
Yeah.
up and smoke.
I think that's what killed me about it was Ruth's contributions. All because Myers said to Jonah early on in the series, like the thousands of people she's interviewed and the countless hours she's poured into gathering this information. It's not something you can just pull back or go, well, we've still got a little bit left. It's the foundation of their entire enterprise, uh, which could be rebuilt, but as time goes on, it gets harder and harder and harder. And God knows how many decades were spent in establishing all this. They definitely hit up the hunters where it hurts. Uh, what do they have left to work with other than chutzpah?
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they rebuild. The last thing I want to mention, we did get to see, it seems like the same doctor from the short scene we got last week, and they're testing like an explosion in a field. And I just wanted to bring this up
Mm,
because we talked about obviously the threat of a bioweapon. And we're like, all right, well, it's a bioweapon, it's not a bomb. And then they turn around and now they're testing explosives. So seems like it's both. Maybe that's their way of deploying the bioweapon. I'm not sure. But they talk about how the explosion's not as impressive in a big open field, but in a small confined space, it's going to be more effective. So I'm a little on edge to say about what their plan is and where they plan to set that off.
yeah, our last episode, you had mentioned that a bioweapon would be particularly effective at a large gathering, and my internal thought was, well, so would an explosive. Uh, so yeah, either one of them is just as viable as an option to carry out an act of mass terrorism. Now I'm wondering if it's a two-part plan where either they do one in one spot and one in the other, or one bomb goes off to set the groundwork for then the bioweapon being dispersed.
Right. I had the
I
same
don't
kind of thoughts.
know enough about this kind of stuff to really figure out where they're going with it. I just know it's going to be awful.
We can agree on that. Especially with what we've seen on this show. I'm sure
Yeah,
it's not going to be very pleasant.
and every time they cut to these scenes, like, because I don't recognize like you said, is it the same people we saw in Paraguay? I don't know who these people building the bombs are. I don't know who these people testing these weapons are. And every time they cut to this new group of Nazis, it just reminds me that while the hunters are following their prey, and we've, as the audience, have been following Biff and Travis and the Colonel, like there's still this other faction that has been working its timeline this whole series long, completely uninterrupted, completely unaffected by the actions of the hunters and the FBI.
Right.
Like that's what gets me, is that they're still going, like straight to their goal.
Yeah, it's very, very ominous.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into our predictions and wrap this up, do we have any news we could share?
Yeah, since you mentioned Master Thespian Dylan Baker doing a great job as Senator Biff Simpson, he's been part of this project, we'll call it, that's been going on in the past week. I guess so have you seen when Patrick Stewart read one of Shakespeare's soliloquies and just put it out on the internet and it went around?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so that inspired this whole thing called 24-hour, the 24-hour plays. So Dylan, as long with who we got, David Diggs, Becky Ann Baker, and Noah Galvin, those main four, accompanied by loads of other talents, put together the 24-hour plays viral monologues. So they collected a series of monologues. They had 24 writers and performers to premiere an hour's or a day's worth of entertainment on March 24th. So you could watch the 24-hour play, as it's called, on the Instagram TV channel of the same name, 24-hour play. And so, yeah, so Dylan Baker he's a Tony Award-winning actor who got together with some other amazing theater talents and put together this grassroots, out of the blue theater piece that anyone can watch from inside the safety of their home. And I just think that's a really cool little project they did.
Yeah, that's a great cause. And I mean, I'm not really good with names, so I don't know quite too. I know a few people on that list, but he alone would be great to watch a monologue or whatever he's doing. I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, and if you do the full list, like I said, there were 24 performers and 24 writers, so there's tons of names to look into. David Diggs, I think, David Diggs is probably the most iconic name at the moment because of Hamilton. But yeah, slew of talent all contributing to this thing.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's get into some predictions really quick. Kevin, you got any predictions you want to get into?
No, I don't. I feel like everyone's like, okay, so last episode they were kind of chaotic and I thought they were gonna disband, they'd have to get back together. And they got back together. I feel like Joe made amends with Harriet. Now we know who Harriet's true intentions is. I'm still not satisfied with Meyers' explanation for why he acted so rashly with that woman, the propagandist.
Tilda,
Um,
I think.
yeah, I've already forgotten. I've moved on. Yes, thank you. So I'm still curious as to find out a little more about him, and I'm sure Jonah is as well. So I can only imagine we'll get a little bit more of his backstory. As far as where the team goes after the huge roadblock of having their base of operations destroyed, they're going to be a little bit in the wind. That's not the right expression. They're just going to be fluttering about trying to regather themselves as to figure out where to move forward, especially now that Millie, I'm sure, will catch up to them. She's not giving up on this. My prediction is the hunters are going to be slowing down and they're going to just kind of start flying by the seat of their pants a bit. Meanwhile, that date approacheth.
Yeah,
So I'm sure it's
I
not going to go
agree.
well when it happens.
I definitely think it's going to get a lot more actiony, I guess. Less planny, more actiony.
Yeah, that's a
There
good
is
way to
that
put it.
kind of ticking clock going down. I'm excited to see Roxy return. I don't think that we've seen the end of her for sure. I'm curious to see how Meyer or probably Jonah talks her back into coming to help them with whatever they come up with as a plan. Um, yeah, and I'm curious to see Jonah still kind of adapting to the group, and how he confronts Meyer and what Meyer is going to say about the parent thing. I'm going to say I don't think that he's the grandfather. It's kind of ignoring the perfect layup that is there already, but I'm just going to stick with my gut, and I think there's something more involved. I definitely think Meyer knows about who the grandfather is if it's not him. Maybe we'll get that story. But I don't know. It should be interesting. We'll see. We'll have to tune in for the next episode and find out.
Yeah.
Um,
Now
anything
that
else you want to say?
Well, just now that Jonah has fully been coalesced in the group, he's part of the family. Like being a part of this family ceremony of the wedding certainly cements his place among the whole team. So yeah, if he's gonna start poking around and like trying to take on the leader, so to speak, and take answers out of him, it's gonna mess with that dynamic that they finally coalesced. So
Right. Should
I'm sure that's gonna
be
happen.
yeah. So that's gonna do it for us guys. Kevin, you want to tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, of course. You guys can find me on Instagram at Kevin Allen Graham or on Twitter at Kevin Allen Says.
And guys, my name is Nate Miller. You can find me everywhere at Dog Like Nate.